Being trans is just a phase. At this point, it's a trend. Trans women are really just men, and trans men are really just women. You're not trans enough unless you have surgery or hormones. Trans people are mentally ill. Trans people are a threat to women's spaces. Trans men are really just confused lesbians. Trans women are really just effeminate gay men. Really, there's only two genders. Teaching kids about trans people is really dangerous. Those are just 9 dangerous misconceptions about trans people which fuel the obsession and stigma. And just to be clear, trans people are human beings that are deserving of the same love, respect, and care as anyone else. So starting with the first statement, it really minimizes and kind of dismisses the trans experience because it's not a phase or a trend, it's who they are, it's their identity, and it's what they recognize themselves as. Usually when we come out as gay people, lesbian, etc., a lot of people have their family or close friends that are heterosexual say, oh, it's just a phase, like you'll be over it soon, or, you know, that's something you've seen somewhere and, you know, that's not really you. And then it turns out that actually it's not a phase and you're not following a trend. It's just who you are. It's very similar to that in the sense of it's almost what people, I think, say to themselves to kind of give themselves comfort in terms of, I can tolerate it for now whilst you're kind of going through it and figuring it out, but I don't believe it and I don't accept it, just to make it clear to you. And that's exactly what it's doing when you make that statement towards trans people. It's dismissive of their trans experience and minimizing their experience and making it like they're just jumping on a bandwagon when actually a lot of trans people get a lot of hate, have a lot of hate crimes committed against them, and just get treated differently for being who they are. I don't think a lot of people would opt in to get that hate and that mistreatment that a lot of trans people get. It's simply because they have to be true to themselves and live their authentic lives. It's just very dismissive of their experience. I think that with this particular statement, the issue I have with it is that it misgenders people, and I think that there's no real reason for you to not identify them the way that they're asking to be identified. And also I think that it's really sad and quite cruel, to be fair, when it comes to things like gender dysphoria, where a lot of trans people do face things like depression and unsatisfaction and just general sadness because they feel as though the body that they were born into isn't a true reflection of who they feel they are and the gender that they feel mostly aligned to. And those type of statements, it just adds to that gender dysphoria and that dissatisfaction and that depression in a sense, because you don't respect it. You're kind of telling them you're not who you say you are whilst they're telling you who they are. One, we're living in a financial crisis and not everyone has access to the same resources, the same money, the same jobs, the same support from their family and friends. And also not everyone wants to have surgery or have hormones, and that's not what being trans is about. It's not about you getting surgery or hormones. It's about you identifying with the gender that you feel is a true reflection of who you are inside as a person. Even that expectancy that a lot of heterosexual people put on trans people in terms of, oh, well, you're not this unless you have hormones or surgery. It's just really weird trying to create rules and definitions and boxes for trans people to identify as trans. You're not trans, so why do you care? That's what I'm not really understanding. Society is pretty much against trans people and is trying to erase them and, you know, really in all corners dismiss their experience and dismiss their rights and dismiss them as human beings. It just feels like with that statement, people are always trying to push the finish line in a sense in terms of, okay, I might respect you as trans if you do this. I might respect you as trans if you do this. You're not in control of that. To me, that statement is just a way for people to try and control trans people and, again, coming up with an excuse to dismiss their experience. Because I feel like in general, it just erases and dismisses, you know, non-binary people, gender fluid people, anyone that doesn't really conform to society's view of what it means to be a man or a woman, and it puts people in a box to conform. And I think it's just for people's comfort, to be fair, and mainly heterosexual people's comfort, but I don't understand why you would care. This statement, I think, is just bullshit. Trans people are not mentally ill. I think that gender dysphoria is a real thing, but to say that trans people are mentally ill, the two don't even equate. They're not remotely similar. And I think that these type of statements stop trans people from accessing healthcare and support that they need. You can also be trans and just not have any mental illnesses, but I also feel like, if anything, it's usually other people's expectations and hate that is probably going to give trans people mental hurdles to kind of work through, rather than like, oh, they're just mentally ill because they're trans. That isn't what led to them making that decision or identifying as trans. It wasn't a mental illness. I think a lot of trans people are actually very much in touch with who they are and effectively communicate that. But I just can't understand why, if they aren't doing anything to you, why do you care? I've never got a good answer. It's always been stuttering, or they have to take a breath and think. And it's like, Bitch, are you dizzy? Why do you care so much? Like, do you want a trans man? Do you want a trans woman at this point? Maybe you do. Because there's a fine line between love and hate, to be honest. And the trans girls, they're real pretty. The trans men too. You know what I mean? So maybe, you know, you want to, I don't know if you want to build the pussy. I don't know what you want. But that is a key question for you to ask yourself. Why do you care? If anyone can give me a good answer, I'll give you £500 my goddamn self. But to this day, no one has given me a good answer. They're not mentally ill. You are mentally ill, bitch. Because if someone is occupying that much space in your brain just for existing and being themselves, don't you think that's weird? Don't you think that you need to go to the A&R for that? Don't you think you need to go to the doc and find out what's going on? Because I do. They're not doing anything to you but living their truth and just existing, and that pisses you off. I mean, that's kind of gaggy for the trans people, to be fair, because I get what it's like, you know, you're just existing and you're getting the bitches mad. The idea that trans women are a threat to women's spaces, I think is completely absurd. If we actually look at stats and data and facts, because that's something that, again, a lot of people like to dismiss when it comes to discussing trans people and trying to push their own agenda and propaganda. If we actually look at the stats, trans people are actually more likely to be attacked or subject to hate crimes compared to straight people. UCLA released a report, I think in 2021, that found that trans people are 4 times more likely to be the subject of some sort of violent crime compared to straight people, just for being themselves. And around 350 trans people were killed globally, as was reported in 2024, which is the highest number on record since those stats were being recorded from around 2008, which clearly shows that trans people right now, today, more than ever before, are in a very vulnerable and dangerous position. And the Trump administration is trying to get rid of that reporting, which reported on the global deaths. And I think that in itself says everything. It's a control tactic. It's a fear tactic. It's not based on truth. It's not accurate. It's not based on what's actually happening. This might be an educational piece, because with this statement in particular, people need to understand the difference between sex and sexuality. So let's break that down. I'm gay. I like men. I'm a man. I like people that are the same gender as me, men. Sex, I am a man, not a woman. So, having broken down the difference between sex and sexuality, we need to recognize that trans men, they can like women, like men. They might even be asexual, bitch, who cares? And trans women can be lesbian, they can be bisexual. Do you understand? Do you understand how... Oh, Jesus. Okay. So, let me come back. You should have learned this in school, to be fair, whether you went private school or state school. I don't know if you bitches are living in cardboard boxes, bitch. You need to call Flo. But, please, I'm gonna have to school you on the difference between sex and sexuality before I even get into your ass as to understand why you're so bothered. Just sit down somewhere. That's annoying. You're like them flies that come in summertime and they're just buzzing around. They get in, can't get them out. They don't know how to get themselves out. You got yourself in, babe. So get out. Dumb bitch. Oh my God. This particular statement makes out that like being trans is performative. They're performing, like they're trying to put on a show. They're trying to be something that they're not. Which again is just really dismissive. It's condescending. It's just arrogant. They've told you who they are. You're the one that don't understand the difference between sex and sexuality. But here you are. Need I say more? I don't think so, baby. I don't think so, baby. I don't think so. You bitches can't even spell Prague. Bitch, bye. In many different cultures, whether it's indigenous cultures within Native America, Hindu culture, Egyptian culture, in Uganda, in Nigeria, in so many different cultures, there has been more than 2 genders. My issue with this particular statement, especially when it comes from people of colour and it comes from black people, etc., is that a lot of us as people of colour and black people don't recognise the full effects of colonialism. It is a colonial mechanism to erase our history and try to rewrite it for us. There was 2 spirit people in these indigenous cultures within Native America as both masculine and feminine, not one or the other. Not as man, not as woman. In South Asia, you have Hydra people that were seen as multifaceted when it came to gender, identifying as both masculine and feminine. And they were largely seen as adding a lot of value to community and the people around them, and were really respected. And they have existed for decades. And I think a great depiction of Hydra people was actually in Monkey Man, which was directed by Dev Patel, if you've not seen that. And that was a beautiful representation because it showed the Hydra people actually supporting him to kind of gain retribution when it came to the murder of, his mom and things like that. I won't speak too much about the movie in case you haven't watched it, but there's a certain time when he's going through it and the Hydra people support him and help him to build himself back up, and then they come through for him at a later time. So yeah, that was a beautiful depiction of Hydra people, especially if you are Southeast Asian and you've not watched it. I would definitely recommend you go and watch it because that's a great depiction of your actual history. Western society will try to tell us, especially as people of color and black people, that there are two genders. But Western society did not create gender as a concept. They've tried to kind of mold it to what they want it to be, and then they try to teach us that. And I think we have to be very aware as people of color and black people that if we don't stay on top of our culture and our history, they will erase it or rewrite it for us. That's why it's important that we educate ourselves and educate each other and ensure that we do stay on top of our history, because our history is so rich. And we adopt some of these things from Western society and white institutions, and we're kind of doing their work for them. It's so sad when I see people of color and black people putting down trans people in particular, because I just think how much history you must not be aware of to even be reinforcing these stereotypical and very Western views when it comes to trans people. Trans people are telling you exactly who they are. If anything, they're so sure of who they are in themselves that is what is allowing them to communicate to you, refer to me this way. And this is why pronouns are so important in terms of showing that respect and that solidarity. How can someone be deceiving you whilst telling you exactly who they are and being so sure of it? How is that deception? I think what we really need to talk about, if we're going to talk about deception, we need to talk about the fact that you see the gay people that I see around me, the gay community, when I'm talking about dating is so hard and the dating pool is so small, it's because you guys don't allow niggas to come out. There's way more gay men than you could ever think. They might be your brother, your cousin, your uncle, your granddad, your dad. I've met some of them. Some of your family members, I've met them. I've had to leave their house. I've had to leave your house even because you share in the house, right? You're out doing shopping at church, at work. They're trying to get their back blown. And I'm having to be like, why you want to see me so quickly? Why are you rushing me? Like, why are you putting down the curtains? Like, those are the real people that are deceiving. But again, you guys don't allow people to be themselves. Less of you would have people deceiving you, these DL men, if you allow people to just be themselves. They wouldn't be hiding. But instead, you're causing people to feel as though they have to conform to societal views and they have to be a certain way, and then people live double lives. That's the real deception. And you can't really blame them because society also doesn't allow a lot of people to feel safe coming out as gay, lesbian, queer, etc. because it's seen as, oh, you're deceiving people, you're doing something onto people. How can you be doing something onto people whilst being yourself? None of the weird experiences I've had with people trying to deceive have been with trans people. It's mainly been with men that are either bisexual or gay, but don't feel as though it's safe to come out as such and own that truth. So I think that's where the real focus should be, rather than trans people trying to deceive people. Some of you watching this are probably even trying to deceive people, trying to deceive yourself. You don't want some designer pussy. Girl, please. Trans kids exist, whether you want to accept it, whether you want to recognize it or not. And actually teaching kids that trans people exist is not causing people to be trans. When it came to, say, sex education at school, I was taught about men and women having sex, and this is how babies are made, and this is how it is. There was no coverage of man and man together, woman and woman together. That didn't then make me be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be with girls and this is the way it should be. Like, I was always into boys. In the playground, I was looking at the boys. I was looking at the fine shits, okay? I was trying to get me a boyfriend from like 6 years old. Even me being gay, I didn't see guys kissing in movies and stuff that I was watching. Cinderella, Princess and the Frog, Hercules, all of this stuff. It was, heterosexual relationships that were being depicted. And I think also teaching kids that trans people exist also reduces bullying. It helps people to understand the fact that they're human beings deserving of the same respect as any other child or person. And I think that people need to be aware of that. How are you even expected to exist in society if you don't understand the different people that exist within society that you're sharing the space with? Trans kids are deserving of protection, education, support, just as much as any other kids are, because they exist. This argument of protect the kids was used when it came to feminism, the rights of black people, and was used when it came to the rights of queer people as a whole outside of trans people. It's not a genuine fear, it's a tactic to control people in our view of what trans people are and trying to depict them as a danger to the rest of us. I think that inclusive education helps to support the mental health of trans kids and just ensures that they have that extra comfort too to bring themselves to school and show up and be themselves, because they're deserving of the same education as anyone else, but also just that extra support and that harmony in terms of like them existing with other kids that don't identify as trans. So I hope that if you're new to my channel, you did gain something new from this video. I know it's a bit different to my usual videos, but I think right now in particular, trans people need our support more than ever, and especially within the queer community, we need to have a bit more solidarity. We need to just protect trans women, trans men, trans kids across the board, period. Anyways guys, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye bye.
Even if you don't love yourself.